everybody to the 18th session of the Genie Out of the Bottle Generation Politics. Today we are with Benjamin Bienert. How do you pronounce your last name? Bienert?
Bienert.
Bienert, okay, that's beautiful. He is our Genie Out of the Bottle. Benjamin is born in 1998 and recently graduated with a Master of Laws and a Master in Environmental Technology in Paris and London. In addition, Benjamin studied environmental issues on two other continents. His studies have shown him the importance of having a positive impact on the planet and its inhabitants. As a result, Benjamin has been involved with the European Youth Parliament since 2014, and he was even the president of the European Youth Parliament in the Paris region, member of the board uh, European Youth Party France, and associated with the governing body. Benjamin was nominated by the German Foreign Federal Office for 2020 French Young European Ambassador and made policy recommendations for the future of Europe. He is also a member of the International Youth Think Tank and worked for a French deputy. So, Benjamin, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me. So, as you just said, I'm Benjamin. I am 22 and I come from a rural area of France, actually near a city called Limoges. This is where I was born and I was raised in its countryside until my teenager years. But yeah, basically, I am a first generation to go to university. And as you said, I studied law, but also environmental technology. When I was young, I was really involved in my community already and really understood since my early age the importance of being into a multicultural environment. And this is what I tried to find out by integrating multicultural classes and taking intensive English course, for example, that were available. And these were like the first experiences that taught me to understand other culture or work with them in a way. And then I joined organizations such as the European Youth Parliament or even the International Youth Think Tank, who really allowed me to build on these skills and further develop the opportunity that I had to meet people from other countries and really develop kind of an international mindset, but also a will to discover Europe. And yeah, in the past 5 years, I traveled to a bit more than 25 countries. So I spend most of my time dedicating my time in the end to discover Europe, take part in cultural exchanges. So yeah, here I am today. I finished my studies. I'm a young graduate, graduated in last November. I am currently in Germany, in Frankfurt, where I work for a startup. And last year, I've been named, as you said, by the European Youth Parliament, but also the General Foreign Affairs Office of Germany to be a Young Europe Ambassador. So through my story, I want to do this presentation and also like give a bit more like general insights of mine. So let's go. So first of all, I want to start this presentation with this picture of Mars, because I don't know about you, but last month I felt like we were completely spammed almost by these new pictures from Mars. And even though I don't want to deny the technological achievements, I saw like a lot of people being amazed, and I was still a bit confused because for a moment I felt we were already on Mars, but then I was like, well, not sure it's for tomorrow. And definitely we are on Earth and we are stuck here, I would say, with the rest of humanity for now, which is fine. But by the way, we're still also in the middle of a pandemic. And first, I did not want to touch upon the COVID and the pandemic situation, because I feel everybody is a bit like tired of hearing from it. But tonight I want to start with kind of the positive aspect of it, especially because I want to see the COVID as a turning point for our societies, and especially because I believe for the first time we slowed down our planet in a way, and that all the generations had on the value of life, which was an interesting thing to witness, I would say. But especially also because I felt the younger generation already felt this importance of the value of life, as we were raised with climate change concerns, and in the end, the COVID situation felt a bit like just an additional issue that is embedded in a complex set of pre-existing issues, which are definitely plural and numerous. So I want to believe we started to understand this value of life earlier, but also I'm kind of stating that we are kind of the last generation to be able to make an impact, especially on climate change, and so to know the humanity as it is today, without sounding too negative or pessimistic. But this is completely linked to the topic of today, which is how can we, the current generation, shape the future for the unborn generations of tomorrow? Because with this strange destiny in our hands of having like kind of feeling the weight of the world in our shoulder, I still want to find kind of solution and hope in it. But yeah, definitely before starting to give more content or insight, I want to point out that this is definitely my interpretation of the question, and this is the way I see it, but I completely understand there are other ways to see it, and I'm really looking forward to the debate that we're going to have after. But yeah, I also want to acknowledge that the youngest generation and young people that can watch us today can have this feeling of having the world on their shoulders, because this is something that I kind of felt through my studies and my engagements. And actually, I want to restate that we were not here when it was decided to cut off the Amazonian rainforest, or we were not here when we sacrificed our health for some comfort or for some points of growth. And that in the end, what I mean by this is that we did not decide to undertake destructive actions toward the earth and its inhabitants. But we have to live with it. And I definitely understand people feeling this way, kind of a bit negative. And I would sincerely would like to answer that all decision makers and people out there are working hand in hand to solve or major issues, even between generations. But I'm not sure you will believe it. At least I'm not convinced. So I want to start this presentation saying that I really emphasizing that we might not be the one to blame for the world we're living in, but actually not being proactive in shaping the future of the world, or the future of next generations. The next generations will make us accomplice of what is going on, and this is why this is our responsibility to shape this future, whether we like it or not. So I'm gonna give you some personal call to action, if I can call it like this. But first of all, is definitely to feel empowered. Basically, this is for all generations, but especially for the young generations. I feel like, from what I just said before, we are legitimate to feel empowered to shape the future, because we know the challenges we're facing, we know we can act, and we're a bit like the last ones to be able to do it. So feel empowered, learn by experience, learn by academic content, whatever, but also be kind to yourself. You don't need to be an expert to act and to have a voice. Um, so yeah, feel empowered, and the legitimacy of all generations is definitely not in question here. So this is one of the first points I want to make. Second one is really like connected, is be engaged. Be engaged, whatever the cause is, be engaged, be open-minded, tolerant, and active citizens. Um, be in the outside world, I would say, and be out there and find cause and like fight for it, discuss it, make them public, engage your families and friends. This is also a good way to bridge the gap between generations, especially with your family, because if you're engaged, your family care about you most of the time, so they will also care about what you're engaged in. And if you're doing this, being open-minded, tolerant, and active citizens, this is like the best way to do it, I would say. Also, be engaged in engaging others and having people on board with you, and learning from others, but also giving back. So be engaged. And if I take a personal example, my engagement has been a lot around the European Youth Parliament. So the EYP is one of the largest and most dynamic youth organization in Europe. We are present in 40 countries, so we are even going um, beyond the borders of the European Union. And obviously we have a branch in the Netherlands. So if you're interested, you can check the EYP in the Netherlands and the EYP in general. You can find us in social medias. But yeah, we're an organization focused on peer-to-peer education. We inspire and empower hundreds of thousands of young people to become open-minded, tolerant, and active citizens, which is really connected to what I just said before. But yeah, basically, we talk about current issues. We sometimes are set in the frame of parliamentary simulation sessions, but this is not only this. This is about having a human experience, learning from others, developing skills, be engaged in multicultural discussions, and have actions, have a voice, learning how to use your voice also. So yeah, this is what I learned basically. I also learned like on specific issues, and it really helped me to grow as a teenager and as a young adult. So this was my engagement, but the advice that I have for the people is to try to ask yourself, what are your aspirations for the future of our world? Might be a tough question, but actually this is very connected to personal development, and especially like shaping the future is developing visions. And to develop visions, you need to know you and what you care for. What do you want to see for the world? So this is definitely the tough question. And even today, maybe my answers are changing from days to days. But this is always good to have these kind of questions in mind. So yeah, first step to find your engagement after you feel empowered is to really find your cause, and you can find it by aligning it to your values, your aspirations, because in any way, there are like thousands of NGOs waiting for you, or projects, citizens assemblies, um, whatever. And if it's not created, you can also create yourself. You just need to have a driver, and drivers are in your aspirations, definitely. Another really important point is act now, because formulating ideas and having visions is great, uh, but acting is better, I will say. especially because now that you have, like, after you gain knowledge and skills, this is also your responsibility to use them, go out there, use your voice and superpowers, as I will say, because I really believe that we all have, once again, this is true for all generations, but you'll have understand that I really hope to empower young generations. But definitely, actions, whatever we're engaged in, or whatever we do, um, whatever our age is, it doesn't really matter. You just need to act. So this is for me an important point, and I obviously wanted to take the latest example of my actions. As we said before, I was named Young Europe Ambassador, and I represented France in this initiative. So basically, it was launched during Germany's presidency of the Council of the European Union, so last semester of 2020. And the goal was to gather 27 young people from as many countries as Europe as we could. And so we were 24 countries represented, and we were gathered to provide policy recommendations, but more widely visions on the future of Europe. And we presented these visions to the 27 ministers of European affairs. And now it's kind of the time that we are sharing the policy recommendations, the visions, and we are going out there and trying to have more debates around them, and not having just produced content for a one-time event, but really like making them alive, because this is in this way that we can shape the future of our world. At least this is what we believe. Also because it has been kind of a huge process. We've worked for more than a month and a half, almost 2 months. We've spent more than 45 hours in Zoom calls to connect from all over Europe, align on different visions and issues. We especially worked on 5 different policies. We worked on the climate and energy policy. We worked on asylum policy. We worked on health policy, digitalization policy, and also the vision of democracy in Europe. And yeah, this was a great way to act, I would say, to have kind of a combined way to still think, feel empowered by the visions of everyone, be engaged, engage decision makers, showing that young people are willing to bring discussion on and debate, and acting, because now we're spreading the world, I would say. And so if I go now more on like the content part of the question, how can we shape the future? I would like to share some insight from what I gained from this Young Europe Ambassadors initiative, and especially sharing with you the visions that we came up with around different topics. The first one is climate and energy policy. So I'm sorry for all the text, but at the same time, I wanted to show the whole vision, so I'm going to read it with you. As the last generation able to effectively tackle global environmental change, we envision a carbon neutral European Union where sustainability is placed at the core of policies and planetary boundaries are respected. We believe that this is only through decision makers' cooperation with relevant stakeholders that we will set up ambitious enough targets to ensure a dignified and fair lifestyle for all current and future generations. So I think this is a good like kind of sum up of my visions, but also the vision shared by a lot of young Europe citizens, which is great. And yeah, I don't know if I should comment way more on it, but maybe during the debate we'll be able to go a bit more into the details. I also wanted to share with you the mission statement on the European asylum policy, as we envision a Europe that is a leading voice in human rights. A coherent and effective policy is needed to safeguard the liberties and rights of asylum seekers and refugees. We believe all refugees should have equal access to the opportunities granted to European citizens, and that Panite refugee minors should be provided with transnational support for the years after they reach the age of majority. Also, an important part of the future is definitely in solidarity, fraternity, and this is definitely going through human rights for actual generations, but also for future generation. But if we are not already like acting to secure this human rights, we can definitely be worried about the future of these human rights. So yeah, another interesting point here, I believe. The last one that I wanted to share, so I've just kept like digitalization and health, but they were equally important and interesting. But regarding the topic of today, I just picked these three ones. But the last one is definitely democracy. And we stated that we aspire to fortify and preserve the fundamental value of European Union, democracy. We want a future where Europe leads the world by example of equality, protection of freedoms, and cooperation. We wish for an inclusive union which listens to the voices of its citizens of all backgrounds, where European youth is an essential force for change, and where solidarity and collaboration help those who struggle. So these are kind of the visions and kind of my answer to how to shape the future. But at the same time, this is a bit like not giving tools for it, but I believe the tools are completely numerous and plural, and there are a lot of tools to achieve or implement these visions. And it's also great to not name specific actions. So obviously in what we wrote, this is not only these visions. Obviously, we have kind of action plans and more implementation part of it. But to present it today to you, I'm focusing on these visions because it's also to like engage people around these visions, to think about this and see what are your thoughts, and also what would you then offer to implement this vision if you share them. So a final personal advice I would say is find your way. I found my way in this kind of projects, having producing policy recommendation, being engaged with people, organizing events, having people on board. But this is not the only way to have a positive impact. It can be through NGOs, but it can also be through your work, through like your personal mindset, what you're doing in your everyday life. There is not only one positive impact, it can be for various causes. So yeah, just find your way because we can all find ours, I would say. And some advice to find your way is definitely to be bold, to live to the full, and think forward. By this, I mean that you should be bold in all that you undertake, because this is the way that you can make sure to have a big impact, and you're not putting you at stake, I would say, trying to be bold. Live to the full is more related to the experience that you can have. Experience as much as you can. Be completely engaged and to the full in all that you can lead as projects or fights or whatever. And think forward, because we need to adopt mindsets that are not set in the stone and that needs to integrate, for example, future generations, but also the future of the world on all the different issues that you can tackle. So yeah, these 3 points are very important, and I'm quoting Martin Sheen, an actor, but actually also a great activist, which say future generations are not going to ask us what political party were you in. They are going to ask, what did you do about it when you knew the glaciers were melting? So obviously this quote is kind of close to my heart because this is around the engagement that I took myself and the fight that I lead. But actually you can replace the last part of the sentence, but whatever is happening in the world, and this will still be true. So don't overthink, don't think too much about how the other perceive your engagement, what you're doing. Do what you think is right for you and for the future generations, and keep this will to act. So yeah, I'm looking forward some uh, Q&A to let
Yes.
me work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Benjamin. It was a beautiful presentation, also very inspiring, very nice